Text 36. Manuhu sendanam astaya Manu snandanamastaya Shatakaumba parichadam Aropya swam duhitaram Sabharyaha paryatan mahim. Swayambhuva Manu with his wife mounted his chariot, which was decorated with golden ornaments. Placing his daughter on it with them, he began traveling all over the earth. Purport. The Emperor Manu, as the great ruler of the world, could have engaged an agent to find a suitable husband for his daughter, but because he loved her just as a father should, he himself left his state on a golden chariot with only his wife to find her a suitable husband. Text 37. Tasmin suddhanvannahni bhagavan yat samadishat upayadashramapadam munihe shantavratasya tat. O Vidura, they reached the hermitage of the sage who had just completed his vows of austerity on the very day foretold by the Lord. Text 38-39. Yasmin bhagavato netranyapatannashrubhindavaha kripaya samparitasya prapanne arpitaya brisham tadvai bindu saro nama saraswatya pariplutam punyam shivamrita jalam maharshigana sevitam. Translation purport by Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. The holy lake Bindu Sarovara, flooded by the waters of river Saraswati, was resorted by hosts of eminent sages. Its holy water was not only auspicious, but as sweet as nectar. It was called Bindu Sarovara because the drops of tears had fallen there from the eyes of the Lord, who was overwhelmed by extreme compassion for the sage who had sought his protection. Purport. Kardama underwent austerities to gain the causeless mercy of the Lord. And when the Lord arrived there, he was so compassionate that in pleasure he shed tears, which became Bindu Sarovara. Bindu Sarovara therefore is worshipped by great sages and learned scholars, because according to the philosophy of absolute truth, the Lord and the tears from his eyes are not different. Just as drops of perspiration which fell from the toe of the Lord became the sacred Ganges, so teardrops from the transcendental eyes of the Lord became Bindu Sarovara. Both are transcendental entities and are worshipped by great sages and scholars. The water of Bindu Sarovara is described here as Shiva Amrita Jala. Shiva means curing. Anyone who drinks the water of Bindu Sarovara is cured of all material diseases. Similarly, anyone who takes his bath in the Ganges also is relieved of all material diseases. These claims are accepted by great scholars and authorities and are still being acted upon even in this fallen age of Kali. So, as per the Lord's foretelling what would happen after he left Kardama Muni. One by one is happening. So as it was foretold, Swambhuva Manu with his wife mounted on his chariot, decorated with golden ornaments, with his daughter with them, they began traveling all over the earth, and they reached the hermitage of the sage at Bindu Sarovara. So the holy lake Bindu Sarovara is described here, flooded by the waters of river Saraswati, and it was resorted by hosts of eminent sages, and its water is as sweet as nectar. It is called Bindu Sarovara because drops of tears had fallen there from the eyes of the Lord, who was overwhelmed by extreme compassion for the sage who had sought his protection. So the Supreme Lord, for him there is no difference between material world and the spiritual world, because everything is coming from him. So the material world, anything he drops, whether it is drop of tears from his eyes, or whether it is sweat from his toes, they are all transcendental substances in this material world, pure transcendental substances, which are non-different from the Lord. This is a great science. If one simply accepts these facts as the Shastras reveal, then one can take full advantage of it. As Prabhupada says, even now, people are able to take a dip in the Ganges and are able to relieve themselves of all material diseases, because the sacred Ganges is a perspiration which falls from the toe of the Lord. The same way, Bindu Sarovara, if one drinks the water of Bindu Sarovara, is cured of all material diseases. And therefore, the water of Bindu Sarovara is called Shivamrita Jala. Shiva means curing. So there are so many wonderful things like this in this material world, pockets of mercy that the Supreme Lord has left. For those who are devotees of the Lord, there is no shortage of, or there is no dearth of circumstances under which he can be in association with the Lord. It is said here that the tears that has fallen into Bindu Sarovara, they are tears from the eyes of the Lord, who was overwhelmed by the compassion for the sage who sought his protection. The Lord is a wonderful person. He has also tears of joy. These things we have to be understood in a different way. Otherwise, one cannot comprehend these activities of the Lord. Because they look like, why would the Lord have that weakness of that feeling? especially for Kardama Muni, who is in the material world. And he is desiring some material things. Why the Lord would have such feelings? Be a question that arises in the mind. Especially the impersonalist, they cannot comprehend these things. And because of even we are contaminated by the impersonal understanding of the God, sometimes we cannot perceive these activities, personal activities of the Lord, the way it should be perceived. Just like the Lord's activities 5,000 years back when he was here, he enacted his pastimes in Vrindavan, loving pastimes. Lord enacted loving pastimes with the gopis. How can one comprehend these things? For that the Acharyas have explained that the Lord's personal activities are facilitated and arranged by the internal potency of the Lord. The Lord surrenders to the internal potency of he gets influenced by his internal potency of the Lord. And that is his pleasure. The internal potency's job is to create a situation, create an environment in such a way that the Lord can perform his loving activities with his devotees. So unless one understands that there is another internal energy of the Lord who is facilitating these things, one will tend to think that, oh, the Lord is having this weakness, or Lord is not omnipotent. How is he carried away by the ordinary living entity's feelings? He is the Supreme Lord. No, the Lord wants to get carried away. But he does not want to get carried away under the material modes. The material, if you see the three modes of material nature, also create situations of love and affection, loving exchanges. They all created in this material world also. And the entire Bhagavatam, everywhere the entire centerpiece is, central message is that we should become detached from all these attachments, love, affection, everything, and then transcend these things. This is a central message. When that is a message in this material world, how is it that the Lord is ultimately the absolute truth? He is also influenced by feelings that look similar to this. The pastimes between Krishna and the gopis, they look similar to the relationship between young boys and girls in this material world. In fact, in this material world, all these rasas are created, all these rasas are existing by the arrangement of the Lord in the external energy, so that in the human form of life, we can understand the vocabulary of what is different kinds of rasa. Conjugal rasa, madhurya rasa, sakhya rasa. That is why in the material, in this human form of life, you see wonderful, everything is transient, but the vocabulary is there. There are nice relationships. Everything is terminated, everything is inebriated, no doubt. But the sample is there. You cannot say it is not there. Intense loving affairs are there between boys and girls. There is loving affection between parent and children. Nice family feelings are there. Sense of belonging is there. All this world is full of that. Of course, here in this material world, it is too brash in the sense, in this earthly planet, everything is, it's not that much that great, though there are samples. But if you go to the heavenly planets, these things are all amplified a lot. What is pleasure? Sensual pleasure, nice relational pleasure. There is nothing wrong with all these things, because the jiva's nature is to enjoy all these things. But to enjoy here in this material world is what is wrong. So we don't, as personalists, as Vaishnavas, we don't hate relationships. We don't say that, relationship is Maya. But we say bodily relationship is Maya. But relationship is not Maya. Because in the spiritual world, there is relationship between the spiritual Satchidananda bodies. So in fact, in the material world, these nice, sweet, just take, if you see now, Kardama Muni is going to experience so much pleasure, all sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. The material world is a place where the jivas, if they want, very high class pleasure is provided. And it is not necessary that one will forget Krishna if he gets that. Like Kardama Muni is very, very Krishna conscious. And then he had this desire, and then all these desires are being satisfied. A description of Bindu Sarovara, like the Prabhupada translates, resorted by hosts of eminent sages, because these are all maintained by the sages, these wonderful, these holy lakes, and it's like a resort. Even demigods, they also come like that. It's a resort. So, in other words, if you see the philosophy of absolute truth as presented by the Vaishnava philosophy, is all inclusive of all the variegatedness that you see in this material world, all the variegated kinds of pleasures and anandas that you see in this material world. It is there in perfection in the spiritual world. And even in this world, when the living entities are enjoying that, the Lord, for His devotees, because Lord is expanded as Paramatma in the hearts of all living entities. The Lord is there as a Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Shirodaksha Vishnu. The Lord is, it is Lord's Leela. This material world is also Lord's Leela. Ye tamam prapadhyante tam sati bhajamyaham. It's also Lord's Leela. There is nothing that is not Lord's Leela. So this is also Lord's Leela. By His mercy, the living entities in this material world, as per the laws of karma, they get what they deserve. As Kama Bhaktas, they get what the Lord, mercifully bestows upon them, even if there is no karma. By their pious, by their prayers, the Lord is always very kind to the devotees. He is Parameshwara. He can do anything. He can sanction anything to anybody. So, the material world is not to be understood to be without the Lord, without the control of the Lord. Everything is under the control of the Lord. Prabhupada explains that even in the material world, things are for people, let's say people are having steady families, family life, children, then, some sense of security, income, all these things. If you see Bangalore city, so many families are living. Everything is not chaotic. There's a sense of togetherness there. Who is creating that sense of stability for them also? It is the Lord. He is the maintainer of all living entities. He maintains them. So in the material world, the Lord's hand is there in everything. And it is He who is facilitating the living entity's journey in this material world for only one purpose. The living entity is in this material world. Continuously it is meant for rasa. It is meant for pleasure. It is meant for happiness. It is meant for power. It is power rasa, love rasa, pleasure, sensation rasa, knowledge rasa. Every living entity in the material world is just one after the one or the other. Is always at every moment he is pursuing one of these things. And this material body is created, and this material body, the living entity enjoys all these kinds of things. So ultimately, the Bhagavata philosophy is meant, is talking about all these things. If the simple philosophy is forget about this material world, then the entire Bhagavatam, so many things need not be described. It is a philosophy of absolute truth, means it is a truth of the material world, it is a truth of the spiritual world. If you want to be in the spiritual material world, you can be there. There are heavenly planets, there are this, there is that, there is Bindu Sarovara, enjoyment is there, resorts are there, everything is there. So what do you want to do? What do you want to do, you decide. And the sweetest, all these things are sweet, 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 and nice, sweet things are there in the material world also. But the sweetest thing is to be with Krishna. And that is the constitutional taste of every living entity, is to enjoy rasa with Krishna. And that is actually the ultimate goal of this material creation. Even Mahavishnu, the Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Shirodaksha Vishnu, they are all serving the Supreme Lord. They are churning this material world with so many jivas, with the material energy in a very directed manner. He is teaching the living entities the vocabulary of spiritual world, and finally making the living entities understand that this sweetness, if you want, it has to be with Krishna, the Supreme Absolute Truth. And with Krishna, in Krishna's world, there is another world. The omnipotent Lord, unlimited worlds are emanating from Him, and He is just inconceivable. What is Lord's enjoying capacity? Anandamayobhyasat. Everything in existence is the Lord's, meant for Lord's enjoyment. This is very difficult to digest. When we digest this, then we become Vaishnavas. Everything is meant for Vishnu's enjoyment, and we are all His servants to facilitate His enjoyment. And then He takes care of us, He takes care of our pleasure. We are tiny living entities. Our enjoying capacity is also very limited. The material world does not exist for our enjoying capacity. The material world exists for Krishna's enjoying capacity. His enjoying capacity is unlimited. So even to think of Krishna's, what would be his unlimited enjoying capacity, a person with this unlimited enjoying capacity, that itself will purify our mind. Just thinking of Krishna's unlimited enjoyment capacity. And our sense of enjoyment will just go into oblivion. We get purified of our independent enjoying sense when we think of Krishna's unlimited enjoyment, varieties of enjoyment. Any questions? Here.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, in the beginning of the class you mentioned that we devotees try to see the actual relationship and hate the relationship with the body. We hate the relationship of the body and we try to see the actual relationships. Can you try to explain, Prabhu, further?
We hate.
We hate the relationships of body, like that you mentioned, Prabhu. As Vaishnavas, we don't hate relations, but relationship with body is bad.
Yeah. You see, as Vaishnavas, first we have to understand the truth. The absolute truth, in absolute truth, relationships exist. Personalities exist. And you are also a part and parcel of that Supreme Personality. This exists. So, path of perfection means, in the human form of life, we get an opportunity to perfect our life, means to perfect that relationship. Now, the relationship in this material world, which is perverted relationship, the symbol of relationship is there, but actually the real, they are not. Take for example, we are persons who can think, feel and will. But then immediately as we fall into this body, we start mapping our self-concept as this body. So my individuality becomes this body. Now with this individuality, I relate with somebody, other living entities who are also mapped their body as their self. Who is mapping who is mapping in this body, who is mapping the body as the self? The personality. The personality is eternal. The soul is eternal. Soul is different and its identity is different. If you see the identity that I have now as a man, and every rasa is identity specific. A man's rasa is different, woman's rasa is different, dog's rasa is different, isn't it? Rasa is identity specific. And the identities are all made up. How long you will be a man? You leave the body, then you take another body, then you become a woman. That means those rasas they were not eternal rasas of the soul. So in the material world, rasas are there. The phenomena is there. Your faculty of enjoying is there. But it is all, everything is shown, a sample is shown. So that we go mad. Oh, there are tasty relationships, so nice, loving relationships, so nice. But then everything gets frustrated. Because it's centered around the body. So we don't depend, we don't rely on this bodily relationship, bodily loving relationships. But we give its due value. Yes, there is something for me in the human form of life to experience this. Only in the human form in the animal form, all these fine rasas I cannot experience. I cannot experience family life in the animal rasa, this kind of fine family rasas. I cannot experience fine social rasas that I experience in the human form of life. Though we say it's all Maya, name, fame, adoration, it's all Maya, we say. Now, though we say Maya, we don't say it the way Mayavadis say, that it does not exist. Yes, in its absolute sense, Krishna is all famous. Absolute fame is there. Krishna's devotees also become absolutely famous. These things do exist. So, you understand, you learn from this world. Lord has placed these things for a purpose, so that I can understand what is absolute world. In the human form of life is a rare life we get, where the entire spectrum of rasa, fine rasa, that is available in the spiritual world. You get the vocabulary in your consciousness, in your human consciousness. This full range of vocabulary, you don't get it in animal form. So therefore you see how rare this human form of life is. And therefore it is said that in the human form of life, why they say not simply human form of life is meant for liberation, just getting free from the material energy. No, it's human life, form of life is to learn how to be cultured, fine, sattvic, all these things. When you go to higher levels, finer tastes are there. So this finer taste, not that you enjoy and get stuck and get attached, but at least you say you understand what is in the spiritual world, what could be in the spiritual world. What is Ananda in the spiritual world? What is the varieties of Ananda in the spiritual world? And ultimately one understands that in the spiritual world everything is centered around the Supreme Lord. So it's a very big difference between the way the impersonalists think of all the varieties, enjoyment. We Vaishnavas perfectly understand the purpose of Lord's creation, why all these things are there, everything. They don't deny. Just like you say, Prabhupada says, man and woman come together, it's like butter and fire. It melts. It's Lord's creation. Now don't try to counter it. It's Lord's creation because He has to, there are the relationship between man and woman, the conjugal relationship is sweet. But in the material world, it's not like that. It's sweet, but it will tend towards something else. So many dynamics are there. You read the scriptures, what is illicit sex, what is sex, what is everything you understand from the scriptural point of view. Krishna says, I am sex life according to regulatory principles. Krishna himself says, I am sex life. So everything has its place. That properly the Vaishnava philosophy explains and we understand. That is why in the previous class also I was saying, it is a challenge. To understand Vaishnava philosophy is a challenge. To understand impersonal philosophy is very easy. Neti, throw out everything that it doesn't exist. Here you have to understand from 4 hands to 2 hands to 8 hands, everything you have to understand. Why God is blue, why is Rama, why his dress is, all details you have to find out. What is Sudarshana doing, what is Gada doing in the Vaikuntha, everything you have to understand. Just see, it's a whole, never-ending subject. Not that there is no meaning, there is meaning in it. But if you say everything is Shunya, everything is one Brahman, impersonal, nothing to understand, nothing to analyze, ho gaya. That's why the impersonal philosophers cannot explain why all these varieties in this material world, my God, full of varieties, enjoyment, varieties, relationship. I mean, you go to the experience of it, it's so rich in this material world. The experience is so rich. Of course, in this material world, those richness is all conditioned by chemicals. It's all originated by chemicals. But the symbol is, the chemicals are all, this robotic body is created in such a way that it, as far as experience is concerned, it will duplicate the experience in the spiritual world. But the truth is that it is all chemical. Scientists have found out what is the chemical that operates when a boy and girl are attached. They fall in love. There's a particular chemical, everything has been found out. But in the spiritual world, there's no need for these chemicals. The Satchidananda body has got all these emotional circuits. Satchidananda circuits are there. There's no need for chemicals, there's no need for a phenomena. Meeting, separation, all these things are explained by the Goswamis. Pleasures. जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, जगत गुरु शिल प्रभुपाद की जय.